clients, and we do actually have a couple of international clients as well. So yeah, we work with any business from just a couple of people all the way up to some businesses have 400 people, and kind of defining what we do with each of the businesses is quite difficult because it's very different in each case, and it ranges from the basic kind of compliance stuff all the way through to being their in-house kind of HR and training department. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. Just housekeeping. We did have over 20 signed up for this, so I'm thinking that a few people will end up joining a bit late. It would be great if you could put your videos on so we can see we're actually talking to people, and there is going to be a couple of questions on one of the topics that we'd like to ask and get some engagement, so everyone can get a bit out of this. You can put some questions in the chat function if you don't want to speak up, and we'll either deal with them at the end or aggregate them and pick them off. And we're going to share some actions and ideas for you to take away. Hopefully they might use, and also like ways in which we potentially might be able to help on this subject. So yeah, okay. So just to frame things as well, Nick and I actually share a surname and have been married for the best part of 25 years. So any kind of tension or differences of opinion that are in the webinar are genuine, and will escalate probably into something bigger after the webinar. So yes, I thought I'd clear that up. So we've got 3 boys, and we've heard this phrase come out of our boys' mouth over the last few months or so. Dad, that sounds like a you problem, whenever they're kind of questioned and interrogated. And for me, it's a really nice way of framing this problem about how to make your managers more effective. Is it a them problem, or is it in fact a you problem as the senior leaders or their managers as well? And just our lenses from the businesses we work out and the training that we provide is the likelihood it's a bit of both. So there is things that you can do that can help them, and also it's stuff that how we interrogate what they do and support them in any way. So we're going to look during this kind of webinar about them and a little bit at the leadership that they get as well. So I think it's worth at this point making the point that most people, when they go into their first management role, fall into the category of the accidental manager. And so it was definitely true for me. Is the conversation I had was, you're doing quite well, why don't you consider leading the team? And I thought, yeah, that seems to be the natural progression route. And then about a month later, I was leading the team, and 82% of managers get no formal training. And this comes from research and a published paper that the CMI did with YouGov. And 82% of managers have no formal training around management and leadership before they start their role. And this doesn't improve that much in the first 3 years, only gets to about 60% in the first 3 years. So most leadership and managers have had no formal training for their roles. 56% of managers feel unsupported and untrained to do their role. And there's another stat that's not on this slide, that 1/3, so 30%, almost 1/3 of people leave their roles because of the relationship they have with their manager. So this is real, and it impacts them. So when we think about them, we're thinking about them in their roles now. When we look at managers, we look under kind of 3 specific areas. Do they have the knowledge that they require to do the job? And that can be about sector-specific knowledge. It can be around, do they know the company, the processes, the systems? Do they have a basic understanding of some of the employment law bits as well? Do they know what success looks like for them? Do they understand the mission, vision, and values of the business? Skills is more about kind of, do they have the appropriate communication skills? and do they have the correct planning and organizational skills, and are they able to have those difficult conversations? Are they able to motivate and lead their team? Confidence is something that often gets missed with this, and we focus a bit more towards the end of this around how you build confidence. And I think it's a bit more nuanced to building that confidence, but it's equally as important as knowledge and skills, because suddenly you arrive in this role where you're responsible for the performance of people, and that can be quite difficult, and confidence can be eroded quite quickly. So, okay, so how do we assess knowledge, skills, and confidence of managers and leaders? So I'm going to hand over a bit to Nick now, and she's done some work on this. And I suppose, is it as simple as just asking them a question? What do you need?
So it's lovely to see some familiar faces on the screen. If anybody else is prepared to put their faces up, it always definitely kind of makes for a better all-round experience. Hopefully we'll get some of you talking as well, if you're comfortable with that as well. Essentially, yeah, if only it were that easy. So how do we assess knowledge, skills and confidence within our managers? Before we kind of go into those kind of both informal and formal ways that we can assess that, I thought it'd be useful just to run through some of and they used to be called soft skills, but that feels a little bit insulting to them really. So we like to call them essential skills that are required and that can either help a manager excel in their role or actually potentially cause some difficulty, some carnage, some real struggles. Or are we just on mute? Yeah, so what we've got there, we've got our individual manager in the middle, and we've got some of those kind of essential skills throughout the wheel. And then we've got the team. So the individual manager has an impact, positive or negative, on the team. We work very frequently with owners as well. So we've included owners in that model, but the person that the individual manager reports into, depending on how they, how well they are kind of knowledgeable, skilled and confident, actually that impacts directly back on the person that they report into as well. And the wider business. So any impact, good, bad, or kind of, or somewhere in the middle, will impact on the other one, on the wider business, whether that is the individuals or actually it's business performance, it's profit, it's money, it's those, it's targets, etc. So before we actually go into the detail of how you do kind of assess those knowledge, skills and confidence, I thought it might be useful just to kind of run through the wheel and maybe give some examples and hopefully hear from you as well about, starting on the communication side, examples of things that might indicate on an assessment that somebody has the knowledge, skills and confidence in that area and they are competent with communication, which is one of those essential skills, or maybe not. So is anybody brave enough to unmute themselves and give some ideas, either of really good examples of communication or actually where it all goes wrong? Anyone brave enough? People are putting their videos off now. People don't want to talk. Okay, so what we find very frequently with communication is the avoidance of difficult conversations, and it's one that is, out of all of the things that we talk about, particularly with newly appointed, fairly inexperienced manager, is the avoidance of those difficult conversations. And actually the delaying of those difficult conversations can kind of avoid progress within a business. They can have a real impact on the individual. They can also have quite a detrimental impact on the rest of the team as well. It leads to issues around things not getting nipped in the bud. It impacts on culture. it can feel as though there is a lack of clarity within the team as well. So if you're not tackling things head on, if you're not having those difficult conversations, things can get tricky. Does anyone want to give any ideas about decision making?
I'll help them out a bit
Go on
here.
then.
Yeah,
We've got a
okay.
really quiet bunch, haven't we?
Yeah, okay. So one of the things that we observe when we work with managers who are new to their role or lack confidence or lack knowledge is they end up becoming kind of conduits and just passing information and decision making as well. So on one side, you've got the leader or owner who said, "Oh, just make a decision," and they're not confident to make that decision, and that can cause frustration and is a really clear sign that they don't have the knowledge or indeed the confidence to make decisions.
So we find a lot, our owners and managers of managers, quite frustrated about them having to get a bit more stuck in than they should into helping that manager making decisions. They're getting frustrated that the individual isn't making decisions that actually they probably should be making. That is something that we definitely see. What about problem solving? Definitely find people reacting and kind of firefighting rather than actually getting into proactive mode on things. Anybody, any comments on that one? All very quiet. All very quiet. Oh, Nick, go for it.
I'm going to be a bit brave, I suppose.
Oh,
I think
good man.
It's good
I
to
know.
see you.
Thank you. Likewise. I suppose, I mean, both of those elements really, in terms of decision making and problem solving. I mean, I've experienced them as a line manager. I've experienced them as somebody who line managers, and so on and so forth. I think organisational culture plays a part in this as well, and I think you can't lose sight of, dependent upon what the culture is within the organisation, that some managers are stifled because of that. And I certainly, my leadership style is very much about empowering on a case-by-case basis and allowing people to go off and be creative and come up with solutions. And I then temperature check that. But I think that's down to the kind of culture that we've got within the organisation. I think if the culture is contrary to that, you will stifle all of those things within the manager. And I think then sometimes the manager gets the blame, but actually it's about the organisational culture rather than necessarily the skill set of that individual.
Yeah, really interesting. We're going to come to talking about organisational culture and climate, and actually what managers need in order to be effective from the organisation. And without kind of touching on it too much, it's very much about that safe environment, having people to use as sounding boards. You know, not being afraid to not be perfect, and being supported rather than berated when there is that kind of, you know, that there are potentially learning errors, etc., etc. So it's definitely the environment that they're operating in as well. Thanks for that, Nick.
Good work, Nick. Thank you.
Do you want me to say a bit?
Oh, John, yes.
Go for it.
You don't need to be quite so keen, Duncan. I think we possibly do forget a little bit that the three areas you've got under that senior manager banner really: decision making, problem solving, and delegation. I know we're bringing people up to be managers, but you forget that the people that are there, like me, I've done all of those things for such a long time that I don't see them as a skill, and actually they are actually very skillful things, and we have got to teach the staff and the new managers how to do that. And you know, we do, going back to culture, we do have a culture where I say just make a decision, and if you want to run it past me, if I don't say no, just carry on. So it's.
Yeah.
Can I just say something really interesting
on.
that? Is one of John's employees said to me, and when I was speaking to him, he said, "We just need to make a decision" the other day. So so that's evidence that does exist.
Yeah.
I think it is, and I think some of these sessions are getting the right people on them and teaching people how to make a decision, or even not to fear a decision. I very rarely berate someone for a decision. I might tell them that they've made the wrong one or think they've made the wrong one, but I'd probably still rather they made the wrong one than not make one.
Definitely. So I always remember the first job that I had where I was responsible for managing people. My boss at the time, and Nick, you will remember this person at the top of the hierarchy. Actually, one of the things that he said to me was, specific to do with decision making, I will always support you if your intentions were kind of right in the first place. And that actually gave me the confidence to be a little bit bolder and a bit braver with some of the decisions that I found challenging, because I knew that I had the support behind me to kind of back me up when I was doing my best. And that always stuck with me, actually. And that specifically was about that confidence piece, which, you know, you can have the skills, you can have the knowledge, but the confidence needs to come with it as well. Thanks for that. Team development, anything on the team development side? One of the things that we always have when we're doing recruitment for individuals, we get candidates through, they always ask what development opportunities there are within an organisation. What we can see where managers are less effective is actually missed opportunities for development and less of a focus on development, because they're kind of firefighting the day job because they're not essentially doing their job in a way that they also should. Any other kind of thoughts, ideas? I'm conscious of time because I knew this was going to happen. I'm taking over and I'm only on one slide. Nick, yes, go for it.
Yeah, just development, because I think you're right. I think some people see development as what training course can I do, you know, what opportunity is for me to progress my skill set with a view to moving on to other ventures potentially. But I think in terms of team development, I think there is something equally for a good manager to recognise the skills within a team and utilise those skills accordingly to develop the entire unit. And I know I've got quite a small team at the moment compared to what I've had in the past. And it's a very mixed demographic, it's a very mixed skill set. But by using the skills of those individuals, the team has developed. So individuals within that team who perhaps hadn't got any understanding of a law enforcement background have benefited from working alongside an ex-cop, whereas the ex-cop has fundamentally benefited from working alongside somebody from a third sector background who's got understanding around mental health and trauma. So, and to see those individuals develop and that team get stronger as a consequence of emphasising the skills of individuals, I think is sometimes undervalued as well, as opposed to just exposing people to training courses willy-nilly, when actually the return on that is not always what the organisation needs, yet it might benefit the individual. Yeah, and I think effective managers, actually, that's quite an intentional thing to be making happen, isn't it? You can do your job and go your merry way for months and people are just kind of staying in their lane, but they're not necessarily getting the added layer of that exposure and those opportunities. Thank you. So on the engagement and motivation side,
I've got something about engagement and motivation. Is it sometimes gets overlooked, but the power of recognition. So those managers learn how to recognize good performance, recognize their people. It's sometimes they get so in the weeds of the kind of the doing and the metrics of their job, they forget to kind of recognize. And there is some real skill in doing that in a sincere kind of meaningful way. And that was the bit, and it can really move the needle on engagement and motivation.
Definitely. Conscious of time.
Time.
Just on the time management side, I think where we have managers who are maybe less effective, who struggle to manage their own time and prioritise effectively within their own workload, will have a direct knock-on negative impact on the team as well, because they will either be expecting individuals to be doing things very last minute, they won't be asking them to do things at all, it will be causing frustration, and overall really it will just be, on a personal level, it probably will feel quite a chaotic kind of fraught environment, and for individuals they will probably pick up and feel those kind of feel those areas as well. Authenticity is essential when engaging and motivating staff. Yeah. Can we go to that chat actually, right? Because I only got that as a pop-up. Nick, you could have chipped in. I wouldn't have minded at all.
Sorry.
No, chip in, please do.
Yeah, it's just, I've worked alongside people over time who, and I think colleague mentioned it earlier really, that it can be easy to tick a box around engaging and motivating and thinking people are saying the right thing, and staff will see through you fundamentally if there is no authenticity to that. They'll just see it. I work with somebody who will remain nameless who constantly uses the term super this, super that. And it rolls off constantly that the staff almost raise their eyebrows as if to say, there's no genuine aspect to this. It's just you constantly regurgitating something that you think people want to hear. And I think you'll lose staff quite quickly. So, and sometimes it's about how often as well. And if you're constantly telling people, again, the effect wears off because they'll work you out, won't they? They're not stupid.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, one of the things that we talk about within Danton is kind of, you know, being authentic and actually doing things your own way to get, you know, to get the outcome that you need. And actually there are different routes. We talk about it with DISC and communication as well. There are different routes to get to the same outcome, and actually being authentic with feedback, giving feedback in the way that you would naturally give feedback, or, you know, congratulating somebody on doing something, giving positive feedback in the way that you would in your own authentic way, actually feels a lot more genuine than being a little bit of a robot and doing it in a way that doesn't feel genuine. People pick up incredibly quickly on on that kind of lack of authenticity, and they get suspicious, and you kind of you lose a little bit of trust and confidence in that, don't you? So we won't spend anything like as long on the next bit, but really genuinely, thank you very much for your input on that. I talked right at the start about there being kind of formal methods and informal methods, and even within these 4 bullet points here, and we always look to take a combined approach to how we would assess those knowledge, kind of skills and confidence within the individual. Self-assessment is an absolutely brilliant way, but you don't know what you don't know. So if we are going to ask individuals to assess themselves, in my experience, we need to give them a good framework that they're going to assess themselves against. If it's quite loose, they might miss fundamental areas because they don't have the knowledge. They don't know what they don't know at the moment. So self-assessment is a brilliant way, self-reflection, just taking that time, not just a kind of a one-off, but over a longer period of time, but give them a framework to operate within. Feedback, amazing. Again, formal feedback, informal feedback. It can be how am I getting on? What do you think? What can I, keep, start, stop, kind of, that approach. 360 feedback is a formal way that we can do it. But again, kind of quality in, quality out. So it is about framing it and getting things right. One-to-ones for me are absolutely an essential for every single experienced manager, inexperienced manager, team member, just those touch points of having a one-to-one and just checking in, making sure that they're okay, making sure that they have clarity, making sure that there aren't any kind of missing links, making sure that their development plans, even not necessarily a 4 or 5 page document, but making sure that you're having those conversations about development and you're capturing the essential bits. And then the performance side, a number of our clients don't have formal performance management frameworks, but they do incredibly well at developing and growing their leaders of the future. Formal performance frameworks work brilliantly, so do informal ones. Sosdom, not too much.
Okay, so this is if only. So in terms of knowledge and skills, training is a really good way of doing that. And when we talk about training, we're not talking about everyone sat in a classroom and learning those things there. It can be through kind of mentoring, shadowing, and all of those things. But the real powerful thing for that is having really clear ideas about what you're training and having intent about the goals of that training, and also checking that knowledge and skills have been absorbed. The other thing, and the reason I've reduced the kind of confidence down, is knowledge and skills and what training can give will only give confidence to a point. But the bit for me, and this is the key when it turns out, is how do we grow that kind of confidence so people can actually do those management and leadership roles. So there's first thing with this, it comes from the support that they get, potentially the recognition that they get, and also it's time in the role. Experience is really powerful, but to start with, I think this is when it starts to be a bit of a you problem. Going back to my analogy of kind of what George says to me, that seems like a you problem, Dad, is what can you do as the more senior leaders, the business owners within the organization there? So I've got the first point here is allowing time, and the best analogy I've ever been given for this is kind of baby steps. Is when our boys started get up and walking, we would they would fall over, or would give them kind of a hand to and walk them through, and they'd be cruising around. And then that would kind of develop to less support, and they would walk between kind of their grandparents, and that distance would get bigger. No one's ever said to a child, you have to get up and walk 100 meters without falling over and wait until that time. And in many ways, I think you've just got to allow time, and nothing's going to be perfect from from the start. Give them time to lead. And what I mean by this is making sure in what they do, they've got some time set aside to do their leadership and managing activities. What we observe is very often people go into their first management role, but still have a big foot in what they used to do. And then they're mentoring and still doing that. So they need time to lead. Just that support, whether that's a mentor, whether that's another colleague, or whether that's the interactions they have with you as their leader. I think, and I touched it, kind of Nick touched on it around delegation there, and decision making, and really kind of coach them more, ask them what they think they should do, what the outcome they think will be, what are they trying to achieve, and a more of a coaching mindset with them. In the same ways, when you assess them for having effective one-to-ones, are you having an effective one-to-one with them? Are you kind of setting aside time to talk about their leadership and management stuff? Or are you just drilling into kind of the what of the numbers or whatever that might be? I think another thing that grows confidence is be able to tolerate mistakes, and just as long as they're learning from them, then that's fine. And a bit to what Nick said earlier about as long as the intentions are right, and people learn more from their mistakes than they do from the other thing is when decisions are made for them. So we do a lot of DISC with a lot of the training that we do, and it can be a real powerful behavioral tool, and you can get to understand them. And also a bit of inward looking stuff as well is understand you, and that can really help them in terms of building their confidence, and also help you is the communication you have with them. And this, for me, is all high performing organizations and businesses and all this. There's always this constant thread of looking to improve in their constant development. So look at what you're doing to try and get better as well. So I've had to condense that into about, yeah, no worries. Okay, so just a bit of a recap. When you're thinking about how well managers do, assess their knowledge, skills, and confidence. And the answer is there's probably things that can be addressed by that are them problems that training will look at. And then you kind of in the mentoring and kind of support and recognition roles can help with them. So it's a both problem. Now, I know that time is tight, but we kind of had this bit at the end. We offer this kind of managing people fundamentals program, which is a 6-month program, split over 7-day, 1-day modules. And the biggest validation that we have of this program is the difference the senior leaders see of the people they send on this program, and how they start to build with knowledge, skills, but it's also the confidence they have. They recognize, goodness me, that they're doing that now. They're making decisions, they're doing that. So that's a little bit about what we do, and we find this moves the needles. So any questions at all? 12:31, we're 1 minute over. Okay, so thank you for all of those, for everyone for coming and participating on it. It's been really good. Thank you for that.
Paul just looked like question.
Okay, yeah. Barney needs to do something.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, so thank you. Who?
quick question. Really interesting one. That's back to what Nick picked up on about culture and organisational, kind of the organisational climate side. That is, for me, that is the environment that you're operating within, and people having the confidence to come and be less than perfect, and have the confidence to say, actually, I've got these development areas without it being seen as a negative.
I also think that you touched on something there is they're not like when John's talking about it really there is I want like empower them to make decisions. So you see it as not non-decision making. You also see it in kind of avoidance and withdrawal a bit there that the
Quiet.
yeah, and also I think over time that confidence when their first leadership role can get eroded quite quickly with that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd also like to thank Raya, who has set up all the technology for this, because without her, it would have been an unmitigated disaster. So yeah, there's a hand there. Yeah. Like that, yeah, the hand again. So yeah, thanks to everyone for joining.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you all.
Thanks for Nick for doubling the time she's speaking. Thank you. Bye.